The Ovet made promises of an end to war and human suffering. Promises all were desperate to hear, myself not least, for I'd seen my share of tragedy. I scratched my name in their book, swearing myself to the deathless doctrine. My armor clattered on the ice as I knelt before them and asked myself if I would ever be worthy.
Eredrim the Venerable. In the Orthodox Church, the term venerable is commonly used as the English language translation of the title given to monastic saints. A monastic saint who is martyred for the Orthodox faith is referred to as a venerable martyr. Eredrim's opening dialogue is a lot to unpack, but from this introduction, we get some rare context to the world outside Fulgrim. We learn that it is full of endless war and tragedy and of widespread suffering. Because of this, Eredrim seeks peace.
I do not deserve absolution, yet still I seek it. Our venerable order has slaughtered hundreds, and for what? So the magistrate could redraw the borders of our realm, claim victory over an ill-equipped enemy, over children who can barely raise their swords. Titles and praise are little comfort. No salve can cure my trembling hands, or these disquieting dreams. My brethren whisper of redemption, another way, an immaculate path, heralded by saints. They say that beyond the ice, the old world is preserved. No war, no famine, no suffering, eternal peace, shielded by their unwavering sovereignty. A lineage that spans centuries. Why should I not be counted among the privileged?
He learns of this Immaculate Path and of the Ovate's promises to the end of his suffering. Promises he recognizes that he and others are desperate to hear. He's tired of the senseless slaughter of innocents, of killing people he deems children. Thus, he signs the Deathless Doctrine, consigning himself to the Immaculate Path. Eredrim's story is largely a story about this religion, so let's discuss what we know so far. This religion follows an Immaculate Path. While immaculate means free from sin, it ultimately refers to a being here. An inscription within the enshrined sanctum reads, "Kneel before the Immaculate, place your palm upon the Deathless Doctrine, surrender your pride, your vanity, or as you call it, your will. This is the first sin. Let go, allow her eternal wisdom, untouched and unspoiled, guide you. Your spirit will not falter if it is hers to command." Let's break this down. Kneel before the Immaculate, place your palm upon the Deathless Doctrine. In Catholicism, Immaculate Conception refers to the idea that the Virgin Mary was free from sin from the moment of her birth. Using what we know of the concept of birth within mortal shell, this generally refers to the player character, also known as the unborn. But here we see an interesting connection. Could the Immaculate, the maiden crowned in winterglass, also be an unborn like the player? We'll discuss more later. There's also the Ovid. Ovid here carries dual meaning. From a historical religious context, Ovid comes from the 18th century Greek word oteis, which means soothsayer, priest, or seer. It also literally means an ovoid shape, like an egg. I don't believe Ovate refers directly to the Immaculate here. However, Ovate is placed in direct contradiction to Oblate, of which Teal mentions in his story. If that doesn't ring any bells, don't sweat it, that'll be the subject for another video. But it's two sides of the same coin. On one side you have the Ovate, a practitioner of the Immaculate, and on the other you have the Oblate, a practitioner of something more hot. So back to the inscription. Surrender your pride and surrender your will, as it is the first sin, and surrender it, Eredrim does.
The beauty of devotion is the excision of doubt. It's true freedom, unburdened by the fears of lesser creatures. Deliverance from guilt and shame. There is no need for the agonies of the living when ascension awaits.
Eredrim describes his penultimate salvation, his absolution of responsibilities due to his servitude to the Immaculate. This feeling is also described in the scripture of Euphoria, a consumable that reads, "It is only in a rapturous frenzy that the Spirit exhibits grace. At this moment, we are freed from doubt, acting only in accordance with the divine, immaculate will." Interestingly, there's also an inscription in the Fulgrim Forest that reads, "She rests within a tomb, the most vulnerable of the unborn. His protection is all he has left to offer. A loyal husk, he prays for her birth, refusing to rest, no matter how tiresome his watch." This could either be referencing Tharsis, the first martyr, or Eredrim, but this seems to confirm that the Immaculate is like the foundling, unborn. It also references the idea that the Immaculate is capable of inspiring a powerful sense of devotion. But beneath this feeling of salvation, a new feeling begins to fester.
The sacred rites remain closed to me. I'm unworthy of the venerated nectar, but I will prove myself. These sniveling rats who bow and scrape will never be enshrined. They have neither the will nor the strength to accept the deathless doctrine.
Despite his devotion to the revered, he is still denied from accessing the divine rites, as well as the venerated nectar. He feels a welling sense of resentment that starts to bubble over into paranoia. Why is he forbidden from accessing the rites? Surely he is stronger and more worthy of salvation than these sniveling wannabes.
I waited as the Ovate prostrated herself before the altar. Something shifted. A shadow moved just at the edge of my vision. I turned my head, but I only found another corner of the empty cavern. The wind picked up, and the Ovate raised her head. "The martyrs are here," she promised. "The infirm must be removed from our ranks. The poison of dissent and the frailty of flesh cannot be permitted within our sanctuary. This is a small price for unity, but I'm certain they will go willingly to their deaths. If not, I shall aid them." The impoverished souls waited for judgment. Their heads were bowed, lips moving as they recited the martyr's hymn. My blade fell upon the first neck, but bone and sinew held fast. By the second blow, the remaining devout fled into the dark.
Something lurking just unseen triggers a rapid hunger, picking at his wound of resentment, urging him to act, to expunge the weakness from the ranks of practitioners, to cure their order of the poison of dissent. He cut one down as they recited the martyr's hymn. But we're left with a contradiction. Why would Eredrim, seeking to rid himself from the suffering of eternal war, bring conflict to the sanctum? Was he truly acting out of sheer pride and resentment? Or was there something much more sinister? The effigy of Eredrim reads, "The solemn visage of Eredrim exudes regret, Beneath the gaze of frozen martyrs, he found nothing but silent judgment. Perhaps servitude is not unlike peace to some. As mentioned previously, the word venerable has ties to the concept of martyrdom, which is a recurring theme within the Immaculate's religion. Tharsis, the first martyr, was said to have given his entire living memory in order to preserve the faith. The weapon you receive upon first entering the zone is the Martyr's Blade, of which the lore reads, "A remnant from a long-dead empire, the first martyr reserved this great sword for heretics, but the blade fell upon many pious necks. In time, devotion was not enough. The enshrined whispered of new sins, and new foes hidden within their ranks." But who is this enshrined? To enshrine means to place a revered or precious object in an appropriate receptacle, perhaps a receptacle not unlike the martyr's altar. So does this mean the Immaculate is speaking directly to Eredrim, whispering to him of foes and sinners?
The wardens seized me in the morning. I did not resist. The Elvate proclaimed I was unfit and impure. But I couldn't focus on the verdict. Beneath the shadow of the Immaculate, I felt no pain. I swelled with pride as my eyes beheld her inscrutable form. She was the last remnant of an unquestionable grace, lost eons ago.
A key theme within Eredrim's lore is this idea of a fondness for the past. A nostalgia that doesn't seem to appear until he first enters the sanctum and is exposed to the Immaculate's teachings, clouding his perception to the point where he loses self-preservation. He no longer cares for the present, he cares only for the past, nor does he care what fate befalls him, as long as he lives in service of the Immaculate, in service of a reminiscence, succumbing to the will of an unquestionable grace lost eons ago. The gland you pull from the Immaculate reads, "A crystallized gland, nearly translucent, reveals a void filled with nothing but bright, cold light. The glowing core holds a strange allure, turning the mind toward rapturous reminiscence."
My vision blurred and went opaque. The whiteness consumed the world, leaving only a vague memory. I felt hands guide me, ushering me away. Something sharp slipped beneath the plates of my armor. I swung out wildly, but my limbs grew heavy as cold crept in. I stumbled and fell, claws searching for the seams between steel and flesh.
In Eredrim's last dialogue, he describes a blurred, opaque vision. Opaque is a word that sticks out, as it is only referenced one other time in the game, and an inscription within the inner sanctum, not far from the chalice of the martyr. They grow opaque, solid and brittle like obsidian, still like statues. They loom without purpose, a reminder of past splendor rendered into a tragic substitute. They are referencing the frozen practitioners outside the sanctum, bowed in supplication and frozen in time. We are once again reminded of past splendor and reminiscence. These are others that have fallen to the Immaculate's false truths. Winterglass is used to enhance the Martyr's Blade, and it is described as being prized for being able to preserve the dead and dying. It is not only used in preservation, but in punishment, used against the unworthy in execution. Despite Eredrim's shell location being far from the sanctum, it seems obvious to me that this, in combination with the description of the Winterglass, alludes to his punishment being death by frozen preservation. Like his beloved centuries long past, Eredrim is frozen in time. Ultimately, Eredrim's story is a warning against the temptation of servitude, against the dependency of needing orders over the potential burden of having free will. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, and Eredrim describes a feeling of absolution when he could finally surrender the burden of responsibility. Eredrim was a man who escaped a world of eternal war, only to realize his orders were what defined him. Without orders, without a war to fight, he succumbed to the indoctrination of the Immaculate. Perhaps the Immaculate is symbolic of rose-tinted glasses, because the past always seems much more perfect than it actually was. Once again, I'll include a little bit of interesting beta lore that is no longer included in the game. This one is called the Chalice of the Martyr. It doesn't necessarily seem relevant to Eredrim, but I'll include it for posterity because both he and the Immaculate's lore seem inextricably tied. If you like the video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Those all help me out greatly. I'm a new channel and I put a lot of effort into these videos. If you'd like to see something in particular, please include that in the comments as well. I do read through them all and might take requests into consideration. Anyway, thanks for watching. Peace.